Austin Faith Dialogue at the Crossroads of Religion and Life, a series highlighting the cultural and social interactions with the worshiping and religious communities in and around the capital city. Austin Faith Dialogue is brought to you by the Austin Area Interreligious Ministries in cooperation with KNVA. Join us now for Austin Faith Dialogue.
Welcome to Austin Faith Dialogue. I'm Carl Gronberg, host of the program, and we have a most exciting and challenging program for you and for me as we're going to talk about World AIDS Day and Face AIDS Austin. And I have two very special people with me on this part of the program, but then we're going to shift at halftime and have somebody else come on. So Roger Temme, welcome back.
Carl, always good to be here.
Thank you. And Robbie, thank you for coming and being with us.
It's
We're so always glad to have university students here, so thanks for being with us on Austin Faith Dialogue.
Thank you.
Tell me a little bit about World AIDS Day. That's coming up, the 10th anniversary, Roger. Tell our viewing audience about that.
Yes, it is actually the 10th anniversary of the service that the CARE Communities, the organization I work for, is providing. And basically it's an opportunity for people to gather together to do two things. It's called a service of remembrance and hope. So it's a time to come together to remember those who have died, those loved ones that we've had, people that we've cared for in the CARE communities, the many care partners, as we've called people who live with HIV and AIDS, to remember them and to keep their memory alive and to keep telling their story. We think that's very important. And the other half of the program is hope, because there are so many people living with HIV and AIDS in our community, but they're needing to have that hope, the hope that comes from support, the hope that comes from just being together with people who care. So the service is both a sadness, but there's also a celebration, because we are celebrating the lives that people are living. And we try to do that in that service, which lasts for about an hour, but it's a combination of many things. We call it interfaith, because we try to reflect the many faith traditions in our community, at least those that the CARE communities are involved with. So we do song, dance, prayer, reflection. We're going to have somebody on the show who actually just recently, as a CARE team, lost the care partner who died, and they're going to reflect on that experience. We have a Jewish cantor who will be a part of it, a Buddhist priest who will be with us. So it's always a wonderful experience of just an opportunity to spend time.
In the 10 years that we've had this in Austin, it's been in a variety of faith communities, is that correct?
Yes. It's been since we have a lot of Christian communities, it's been in a lot of different Christian communities, Catholic, Baptist. This is the first time actually it'll be at a Lutheran community. But we've also had it at the First Unitarian Universalist. It's been at Congregation Beth Israel, the Jewish synagogue here in town. So we have attempted always each year to reflect the wider community that Austin represents, and we think that's crucial.
And we on Austin Faith Dialogue think that's crucial also, because we're saying something about the community we live in, and that this is an issue, HIV/AIDS, for the community to look at and also to confront. And Robbie, that's what you're about too with Face AIDS Austin. You're a university student. Tell us a little bit about where you came from.
Well, so I'm from Dallas, which is one of the largest cities in Texas, and I'm really excited to be at UT and obviously be a part of the Austin community. But I actually originally went to school with one of the members of Face AIDS at our national chapter in Stanford, where it all started. I'm a government Spanish and philosophy major at UT. It's my third year, so I'm a junior, and I started Face AIDS about a year and a half ago in the fall of 2006. So.
And why did you become a part of that group that started Face AIDS Austin?
So as I mentioned, a really close friend of mine who went to school with me during prep school, Catholic prep school, for I think 5 years. He was on the football team with me. He's a close friend of mine, and he got involved in Face AIDS earlier that year in 2006. He basically spent a summer convincing me, heckling me, joking at me, telling me that Austin has such potential, and it's a liberal campus, and it's a very large, embracing campus, that Face AIDS could do a lot in Austin.
Why was this friend, and you knew him through high school, through your prep school days, why was he so convinced that this was an important program, Face AIDS?
Well, I think it's the same reason that all of us are convinced, that it's a very personal a very personal but very large and organized activist organization. We're all student-led. We're on over 150 campuses in America. And we actually work directly in Africa, in sub-Saharan Africa, in 2 different countries, in Rwanda and Zambia. Our mission is to motivate and to inspire students to put a face, a human face, on the HIV/AIDS pandemic in Africa, to reach past the statistics, to understand the statistics, and to react on a large scale, but at the same time to react personally.
And those numbers are huge.
Yes.
We're talking about, what, 40 million people
40 million
living
people
with AIDS?
currently infected with HIV.
And we're talking about
12 million AIDS orphans in sub-Saharan Africa.
Right.
Yeah, about, I think, 8,000 die of HIV every day, or of AIDS every day.
and 25 million have died from AIDS from the early 80s.
from the
Yes.
beginning.
And so those are staggering numbers. But you're saying we can humanize this. We can speak to this issue. We can put a face there. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely.
And I think Robbie
absolutely
has a
agree.
good story to tell about that.
Yeah, so Face AIDS started in the summer of 2005 with 3 Stanford undergraduates, Katie Ballback, Lauren Young, and Johnny Dorsey. They're actually friends of mine now through my work with Face AIDS. They went on a, I don't have another word for it, it's a mission trip, I guess, a health mission trip with an organization called Forge that essentially finds students, activists interested in volunteering for summers. And they sent them down to a refugee camp in Zambia called Mwange Refugee Camp. Their job there was to do anything and everything, dig wells, feed people, provide infrastructure, whatever. And they got to know a woman, the only person HIV positive who was willing to even admit to her being HIV positive. She would only discuss it with close friends and family. According to UN statistics, there were 1,000 people in that village who had HIV. As they got to know her and they got to know the situation, they realized how much of a problem AIDS was. She was a single mother of 6. She had been kicked out of her home after her husband had taken a second wife, which is a common practice in Congolese society. She's obviously in the refugee camp, a refugee from the Congolese Civil War. Her name was Mama Katele, and she was very, very inspiring to them. She taught them how to make these pins, which were a social protest that started in
and
Kenya.
the pin is something you wear?
Every day, every day. And I think every member of Face AIDS wears it every day. It's obviously the HIV/AIDS ribbon, and it's done in the African beaded motif. It's made by the members of our support groups. We actually started the PIN Cooperative Income Generating Project with Mama Katele. She died shortly after meeting Johnny, Katie, and Lauren.
And what was her age, do you know?
She died at the age of 42. Face AIDS is dedicated to her memory and to all the people like her. And the idea is, while there are thousands and, in fact, millions of people like her, they're all people, and they can all do something. This is a story that a lot of people in government, which is one of my majors, they tell, that the whole massive activist organizations, like the One Campaign, all that started pretty recently. The first organizations to do anything about AIDS were women's groups in countries with high levels of discrimination against women and against married women with HIV and AIDS. And they banded together, and there are thousands of them, tens of thousands of these groups, just small community groups. Face AIDS has taken their model for income generating and for support and just applied it on a large scale and put together activists from the United States behind it.
You know, and that's the amazing part about this, Roger. And that's when I met Robbie, and thank you for bringing him here.
Well, I feel very blessed to have met Robbie. Recently, we had in Austin the annual AIDS Walk, which was actually its 20th year. 20th year we've been walking for this. And I realized that I was at the first AIDS Walk back in 1987. So I was kind of coming full circle, but the fact that we're still doing it and still having to do it. But as I was leaving after the walk was over with, I walked by this table and saw Face AIDS Austin. So it looked very interesting. I walked over and got to meet some of the students who were there, and Robbie was there, and just had an opportunity very briefly to talk about what they are doing and the difference they're making, and then what we're doing and the difference we're making. And I think the thing that I come through with in Austin is how important networking is. You know, that we're in this together, and the more we can meet each other, what we can do is like your show is doing today, which is not the common thing that's happening today around HIV and AIDS. Because a lot of people think there's been a cure found, nobody's dying anymore, we don't need to talk about it. You know, and we do. We need to talk about it. There are still people who are very much alive with it, taking medications, getting some support, but also those people who fall through the cracks, who are here in Austin are not even knowing because they're afraid to know that they're living with HIV and AIDS.
You mentioned afraid. You mentioned that it's not even talked about in some places, and people are excluded. It's like leprosy was in biblical times.
Actually,
What
yes,
is
exactly.
what is the greatest fear you have as an activist, as a university student? What's the greatest fear that's associated around HIV/AIDS?
That I have or that I've heard of?
Well, maybe that you've heard of,
Um,
or that you have. Maybe that's even more personal.
well,
Tell me.
the fear I have is that people will stop talking about it, that everyone will associate it with, I don't know, gay rights in the 80s, or just with, you know, some continent over there. It's called Africa, and so across the sea, across an ocean, we won't talk about it. That's a fear I have. And I don't think it's going to happen. And being exposed to places like care communities and AIDS Service of Austin, I've realized how much people bond together around this and how much hope and inspiration there is in the Austin community. But the fear there is excruciating. It's daunting. The first is that your family will leave you, which many times is a realized fear. It's what happened to Mama Katele. The second is that your community will leave you, which happens also. And the third is that you just can't get work. Basic, plain, like, animal survival instincts, and I don't want to use that word animal, but human survival instincts are brought out in people. Like, now I have AIDS, no one will give me a job. I can't find a shelter. My parents won't talk to me. My sister won't talk to me. My husband kicked me out. I don't even know how I got HIV.
Isolation.
Exactly, complete isolation. And that's ridiculous because that only
Bobby,
perpetuates the disease.
What about the students on the university campus? How do they respond to you? Here you walk around almost with missionary zeal, if you don't mind me saying, wearing the pin every day like some people wear other religious symbols, if you will. What's the response you find from people on the university campus?
We found a very surprising response. There are 2,000 organizations on UT. That's a little statistic that I think that's the Student Activities Leadership something office tries to tell us when we could become freshmen, and you can start one too. And you know, most of them are like, well, we're you know, the Tom Cruise Appreciation Club or whatnot, and they have 10 members. Well, we started like that with just 7 of us, and we've actually grown to 60 in about a year. And that means 60 now. We've cycled through hundreds of people who have come in and out of Face AIDS. We've found amazing response from people we didn't even think we would find response from. Actually, one of our closest partners on campus is the University Investors Association. They're very strong in the business school, and they approached us and they said, well, we've heard about Face AIDS, we've heard about you through all the political organizations, we've heard about you through the humanitarian organizations.
That's wonderful.
We love you, we should
great.
donate.
And they want to network, as Roger has pointed out, they want to partner with you. Well, we hope that we want to continue this, and maybe you would even say to us, as I've said to Roger many times, because he's been on this program before, come back and tell us more about Face
Absolutely.
AIDS, and tell us about you, because Robbie, you bring us a great deal of hope.
Well,
and
thank
may
you.
we continue to make this known to people. And we want for you to stay with us on Austin Faith Dialogue as we continue this discussion of HIV/AIDS and also World AIDS Day. Please stay with us. Welcome back to Austin Faith Dialogue. We're talking about World AIDS Day, and we're talking about HIV/AIDS. And you met Robbie in the first part of the program. Now you're going to meet another university student who's joining with Roger and me. Prasanth, welcome. You are, your folks were from India, you told me, is that right?
Yes.
But you grew up in Dallas.
I grew up in Dallas.
And you actually have put up with Robbie all these years as a friend, right?
Yeah.
You guys went to school together, high school?
Yeah, we've been best friends for about 11 or 12 years now.
Just between you and me and all the people watching Austin Faith Dialogue, is he really a pretty good guy?
Yeah, as long as we're on the air, I'll say that.
All right. Well, tell us about you, because you were a part of that founding group. Oh, but before you do that, tell us a little bit about your studies. You're a student at the university.
I'm a student at the university. I'm a Plan 2 honors student, and I also study philosophy, and I'm a pre-med. So I'm interested in neurobiology, but I've also, with this face AIDS, I've become really interested in things like immunology and internal medicine. So I hope after I graduate in a year and a half, that I'll be able to go on to med school and hopefully be a doctor, work on some of the things that I've been seeing.
Yeah, I bet you will. And your roots are in the Hindu community, is that
Yes.
correct? Yeah. Well, that's one of the things on Austin Faith Dialogue we've done, is just celebrate all these faith communities that are part of our lives and the traditions that enrich all of us. You became a part of founding Face AIDS Austin. Tell us about that. How did that all come about?
So I guess it's almost embarrassing to admit that at first, when Robbie told me about this, he was very eager. But as his best friend, I'm allowed to put down things he says. I'm allowed to make fun of him on things, and I was a little skeptical. I wasn't sure that. Well, I was skeptical for a few reasons. I wasn't sure that we could do much, and I wasn't sure that we'd know where our money was going. We wouldn't be able to trust the organization that we were working in, and I just wanted to make sure. I told him the first 3 or 4 times we met to make sure he got the research, and he showed me what he found and checked everything out twice and 3 times. And so it took a little time before, when we got more friends involved, that I started getting that there was sort of momentum going, that I really started believing the organization, believing that it could work. It takes a little time to start to convince yourself of something like that. It's a big project.
And it's also, the issue is a world issue. And here you are, a student at the University of Texas, and you're thinking, how can we make a difference? But I think Robbie said something very, very important to me, at least, is that there may be 40 million people who we put a face on this and realize these are brothers and sisters within the family that we all belong to.
You actually asked me how I met Prasant, and I said that I just met him today, but really I met him on their website and through his blog. We can use those words today. You and I didn't grow up with blogs, but university students are. And he's got this really good blog about an experience he shared last summer in Uganda. So reading through that, kind of got to know a little bit about his own journey, his own family, who became a part of that experience in Uganda. So,
can you tell us about that experience you had?
Yeah, I can. So it was a project my uncle was going on. He decided he wanted to go on a medical mission trip, and he went through a group called Cure International, specifically to cure Mbale, which is there aren't that many major cities in Uganda, and so Mbale, while it's rather small by everything I can compare it to, it's still a big city. And he told me he was going to go, and he wanted me to come along. My uncle wanted me to come along, and my uncle.
Is he a physician?
He's a physician. He's a pediatric neurosurgeon, and I view him as a second father, because he raised us, my brothers and I, for a long time, along with my father, and so he wanted me to come along. I was studying for the MCAT at that time, so I rearranged some things and I tried to go along. Spent 2 weeks in Uganda, and it was like I said, it was a pediatric neurosurgery clinic. So what we were doing was taking in patients from around the community, from around the area, and treating them mostly for hydrocephalus, which is it's a common disorder, actually. It's fairly common for neurosurgeons to deal with. It's probably one of the most common things I've heard him talk about. And it's basically where the cerebrospinal fluid, the fluid that surrounds the brain, is generated faster than it can be reabsorbed through the body. And it reabsorbs naturally, but for some reason in these patients it either is produced too quickly or doesn't reabsorb quickly enough. And this was happening because of the same way the analog to the AIDS pandemic was happening because of poor education. And people didn't know how to keep children hygienic or to keep the process of childbirth hygienic. And so there would be infections would lead to patients getting septic, and they would have this.
Prasant, you told us before we came on the air that your name means peace.
Yes.
That's a beautiful message that you bring, and I think your uncle was bringing a message of peace. But something that's very important to you is this whole idea when it comes to HIV/AIDS is education. Why is it so important for you as a university student and obviously the person has compassion and concern for others. Why is education such an important part of the equation of dealing with HIV/AIDS?
Well, I guess there's the epidemic and there's the individual's disease. And for the individual, education can help in the sense of not, they don't make things worse. They actually can learn how to help themselves, and they learn not to pursue paths that are not going. They're going to learn to pursue paths that will keep them healthier. But as far as the epidemic is concerned, and even whenever we talk about these mass numbers, we always keep in mind that an epidemic means lots of individuals we've talked to, lots of individuals who each have a story to talk about. That with each of those individuals, if we want to stop that epidemic somehow, education's what's the lack of education is what's continuing this disorder. That if people don't know what kind of practices they shouldn't engage in, if they don't know what to do, what not to do, and if they don't know how to get treated, what kind of medicines will work, how to get those kind of medicines, then that pandemic will just grow, and so more people will be affected each year. And if you're going to focus on each individual, you have to focus on the whole group as well, and you have to make sure that stops.
Roger, what strikes me is the sense of value of human beings, and that kind of, in my vocabulary, that holiness, Prasant, of seeing in individuals the possibility, the hopefulness that we can have, that people can learn to take care of themselves.
I think we talk about wholeness, we talk about faith, holiness, but we talk about wholeness in people's lives, that we all want to be whole people, whether it's emotionally, spiritually, physically. I think we're fortunate in Austin to have a lot of supportive AIDS organizations that bring to the community the opportunity to both be educated, those who are both infected and those who are affected. A lot of us are affected because we know people. The sadness is that sometimes we don't know that we know people because people won't talk about it openly.
Kind of what Robbie was saying. And what happens is that isolation comes in.
Right.
And this is where Face AIDS Austin is working on education. You're going to have an entire week of special programs at the university campus, right, leading up to World AIDS Day. Tell us about that.
So we wanted to make the whole week leading up to December 1st, which is Saturday. We wanted to make that a very big week, something that people, they couldn't help but pay attention to. And so each day we wanted to make sure that there was education going on, that people were learning about a different area affected by AIDS. So during each day on the university campus, on the West Mall, in front of, on the side of the west side of the tower, we're going to be having a rally, get a lot of organizations together, get people to do. Some of the dance troops are going to do dances, and some of the cultural organizations are going to show up and show their support.
Robbie said there are all kinds of organizations on the campus, and you've
sorts of
invited them all.
We're trying to get as many as we can, yeah.
Good.
And so each day we're going to focus on a different area affected by AIDS, whether it be South Asia, or whether it be America, or it be Africa, and that's good. And so we'll have a lot of education there. We'll have a lot of flyers. We'll have a lot of information you can learn about both statistics and stories, and just ways of getting to know what's going on in the world better. And then every evening from Tuesday through Saturday, we're going to have a different event. So we're going to start with a lecture with a professor from the history department and a professor from the LBJ School of Public Policy, and try to get them to discuss different aspects of the disease from the point of view of the individual, the point of view of the family, and the point of view of the community. Try to make sure that we want to make it a little bit more personal, and so we want to make it very small, focus on the smaller aspects of the disease. And then we're going to have a bazaar bringing out different organizations on Wednesday. So the second day of events. Wednesday we're going to have a lot of organizations from the community, a lot of organizations from the campus coming together. On Thursday we're going to have a movie screening, a documentary screening, Angels in the Dust, which focuses on, if I'm not mistaken, orphans in South Africa, orphans from the pandemic. So, and that's a real problem as far as.
And would we say that 12 million orphans?
12 million,
Yes.
yeah. It's in some areas whole generations have been taken out. Some villages, there's nothing but orphans
Children
and their
raising.
grandparents, and either children raising children or their grandparents raising children. I guess moving on after that, we'll have Friday. We're just going to have. We're going to have a little lighter. We're going to have dinner at Styx's, and we're going to have a benefit there. And so Styx's has been kind enough to to provide us with 10% of the proceeds over the course of that.
And that
Yeah.
benefit is for Face
for
Aid?
Face AIDS, yeah, for all the work that we're doing internationally. And I guess the big event on Saturday night, December 1st itself, is going to be a concert at Club de Vilde. And it's going to have local Austin bands. We're going to try to, it's going to, ticket sales are going to go towards our fight against, towards Face AIDS. And so we hope to have a lot of fun on that day, remembering your fight, but also remembering to stay inspired. So
Well, that leads me.
That's the big event that's going to happen after the other big event that's happening earlier in the evening at 7 o'clock with our service of remembrance and hope. And I really, we talk about hope, and sometimes I get discouraged because we think that we're in this alone. When I walked by this table, Face AIDS Austin, a couple of weeks ago, my hope level went up. When I had a chance to visit with Robbie, listen to Prasant, that gives me a lot of hope, because there are young people who are invested in this illness, this disease, who are going to put a face on it, and we're going to make it very real. So we've also invited Face AIDS Austin to be part of this service and hopefully make a presentation during it. And again, just so people know about the service, it's going to be on Saturday, December the 1st at 7 o'clock, and it's going to be at one of the really nicest churches in the Austin area. And the present company pastor is here with us, Carl Gronberg, who's welcomed us always into his faith community. So we're going to have the service at 7, have just an opportunity to come together, to remember, to give hope, and to allow people to see Face AIDS Austin and all of the AIDS organizations that are here in the Austin area that are serving this community.
Well, Roger, Prasant, and Robbie, wherever he may be at this time, we want to say thanks. It's truly exciting for me, the networking that goes on, and that whole idea of bringing education. And we invite you, our Austin Faith Dialogue viewing audience, to be a part of that week at the University of Texas, and also to come on December 1st and share together a time of remembrance, a time of hope, that we can celebrate all that God has given to us as people. I'm wondering, before we leave the air, how do you and Robbie do it? You're students, you're philosophy, and you're looking for medical school. Where do you find time to do all of these kinds of things, and what leads you to do them? You have this compassion, you're educated, you're compassionate people. How do you do this? How many hours in the day do you have?
More than we have.
Well, I was just talking about how little sleep we're getting, but I think it's also because of friends. We have a lot of friends in this organization, and I was saying before, I wasn't as inspired. I was skeptical until we got friends involved, until we got all of our community together.
And that's the key word right there. This is all about community, and HIV/AIDS is all about the world community and the Austin community. And so we hope that you'll be a part of this as we share together remembrance, but also with hope. Blessings to you in your life. Thanks for being with us on Austin Faith Dialogue.
To date, LeSea Broadcasting has sent over 300,000 Bibles to some of the most remote places in the world. Last month alone in Ethiopia, we passed out 5,000 Bibles and 5,000 New Testaments in the local dialect. For a gift of $2,500, you can sponsor 500 Bibles, or 50 Bibles for $250, and as little as $50 sponsors 10 Bibles.
You can place a Bible in the hands of someone who would never normally have a Bible of their very own. Send your gift today to LeSea Broadcasting, 61300 Ironwood Road, South Bend, Indiana, 46614. Or go to our website where you can use your bank card and make your contribution count today.
For the very best in contemporary Christian music, join our free email subscription service. Find out what shows are coming up, artist information, and the latest music news. Even get product discounts. Go online at www.livefromstudiob.com to subscribe today. Join now and become part of a select group of people who are changing the airwaves through music. It's free, so connect with us at livefromstudiob.com.
Bicycling home from school, one day I was stopped at one of these where the SS's would put up a place where everybody was stopped and your papers were checked. And so they checked my paper and then they beat me up. Now, I didn't have a J, but, you know, the name Isaac Rottenberg, I think, was offensive enough to the SS's that they beat me up.